In the first 2 episodes, we learned some basic words in movies' visual language, and they were all about lights and camera. So now, you're ready to say, action. And the scene plays out. And plays out. And plays out. Some directors like letting a scene play out, in what's called a sequence shot, or long take. It's a long-running shot, usually over a minute, that takes in a lot of action in a scene. Sometimes it covers simple dialogue, sometimes it covers a complicated sequence of events. Sometimes it lasts for 1 minute. This shot lasts 4. And this shot lasts 9. It's something of a game amongst some directors to see how long you can let a shot last. This director won that game. His whole film is one 90-minute unbroken shot. But doing that just isn't realistic, or easy. And after lights, camera, and action, every director has to say, cut. So what is a cut? Basically, it's the transition between the end of one shot and the beginning of another. The simple cut is the most basic transition between shots, though there are others, like the dissolve, where one shot slowly fades into another, sharing the same space for a few seconds. Another common special transition is the wipe, where the second shot rolls over the first shot. The wipe and the dissolve are traditionally done to mark the end of one scene and the beginning of another, or to mark a change in location. Another common cut is the fade in and fade out. It's a common way to start and end a film, going to and from a black screen. It's a simple way of saying, the end. Now, individual shots are created separately, and even though a scene can last under 5 minutes, between the start of one shot and the end of another, there could be hours, days, weeks, and on some troubled productions, months. So filmmakers developed a syntax of shots that make you believe that everything is happening simultaneously, in a technique called continuity editing. Good continuity editing is invisible, drawing you into the illusion that a scene that took sunrise to sunset to shoot is actually taking place in the few minutes that the scene plays out. This kind of editing should be invisible, because people notice when it isn't. These flubs are called continuity errors, where the in-universe logic of a scene doesn't match with what shows up on screen. Look at the man on the left. But that's an obvious mistake done as a joke. Most continuity errors are subtle things that break established conventions, things that go off in your mind as strange without registering as strange. Because without you knowing it, they've broken the illusion. Some of the subtle things directors do to establish a continuous space include using screen direction, having a consistent direction of movement between shots, giving the audience a sense of relative location. In every shot of these charging horsemen, they are always going to the right as they attack. And even though the train goes through several hard turns, the back of the train is always on the left, and the front of the train is always on the right. By having screen direction respected, cuts can be linked together by continuing the action from one shot to another, in what's called a match on action, or continuous action. A good match on action lets movement carry from one shot to another. This can be dramatic, like starting a kick in one shot and showing it connecting in the next shot. Or it can be subtle. A character goes through a door on her right in one shot and enters through that door in the left in the next shot. An action as simple as going from one room to another. If the characters aren't moving, screen direction can be established by where they look, in what's called eyeline. A person in shot A is looking screen right. A person in shot B is looking screen left. Our brain fills in the blanks and figures out that they're looking at each other. Take away the two shot in this sequence, and it still makes sense. In this scene, a character's quick glance, followed by a shot of an important object, can show where that object is in relation to the character, in this case, below him and to the right. In a more interesting use of eyeline, the person in this shot is looking directly into the camera. Another person is also looking directly into the camera, confronting the first person. They talk, and after their first lines, the eyeline changes to just off the camera, showing a change in their relationship. Follow the eyes, follow the movement, build the scene. Now, film's dramatic tradition grew out of theatrical practices. When you watch a play, you can see everything happening on stage at once, from a certain angle. So in film, you can stand back from the scene and get up close to different characters. But jumping behind the actors feels jarring and unnatural. so plenty of directors follow the 180-degree rule. When blocking a scene, directors often use an invisible axis as a guide. So in this complex fight scene, the camera always stays on one side of the fighters. So even when they switch places, we don't feel like we've lost track of where they are. This scene has a visible axis, the train tracks. The train is always going left, and even as our hero bumbles about on the engine, the camera never goes to the other side of the tracks, keeping us oriented and letting us focus on the slapstick happening here. But the 180-degree rule is more of a guideline than an actual rule, and it's broken all the time in what's called crossing the axis. This dinner scene jumps all over the place, but because everyone's eye line is fixed, and because everyone's placement is made clear, it doesn't feel too jarring when the axis is broken. Or maybe the director wants it to be jarring. This chase scene crosses the axis here, and here, and here, and here, and here, but it keeps returning to these shots of the man in the passenger seat and the man in the prison car going in the same direction. Chaotic, but not entirely unintelligible. But bending rules only gets you so far. Eventually, every director has to return to the basics. Your basic scene will start with an establishing shot. This shows where the scene takes place. Then cut to a master shot, a wide shot that shows the scene in its entirety to establish everyone's location. From there, you move into a close-up of someone talking. Then, cut to the reverse angle, the opposite side of the previous angle, showing who or what the first character was looking at. And if there's an important detail in the scene, it'll be shown in close as an insert shot, breaking away from the main action to show an important detail. A wide shot with two close-ups with inserts for details. Wide, insert, close, reverse, and so on. From this camera setup, you get the most common of all shooting techniques: shot, reverse shot, made of a master shot, a close-up, and the reverse of the close-up. Two people talking. Screen direction is respected, the axis isn't crossed. Bread and butter filmmaking. Nothing fancy. But it can be made fancy. Maybe the scene starts with two close-ups and ends with the wide, leaving the audience guessing where they are and who's talking to who until the end of the scene. And one of the strengths that movies have over theater is that cutting allows you to easily jump from one scene to another. In film, this is called cross-cutting, where the film jumps between two lines of action to show that they're happening simultaneously. This play with time and space is one of film's unique strengths as a medium, and intentionally breaking continuity is called discontinuity editing. This is the kind of editing that stops pretending to reflect reality and starts reflecting emotion. A common technique editors use is playing with the nature of time, such as in the freeze frame, where a single frame of film is stopped. It can show angst, or even playfulness. Time can also be manipulated with slow motion. A clip is slowed down, letting us see the tiny movements we'd miss at normal speed. And there's also fast motion, which speeds the action up, often making it feel comical. And finally, reverse motion, which plays the action backwards, giving it a dreamy feel, allowing for impossible things to happen. Impossible things can also happen between shots, through intentional breaks in continuity. The oldest and most famous kind of break is the jump cut, in which a piece of time is cut out of a shot, allowing this capsule to land on the moon, and this moon creature to disappear in a puff of smoke. A jump cut done creatively can have some interesting effects, from simply cutting out the dead weight of a scene, to poetically showing connection between objects, like in this surrealist short. This scene uses cuts to make a joke about the nature of editing film. The entire background changes every time the man tries to adjust to the new shot. This scene was shot with the actor doing the same action in different settings and linked together using the match cut, a technique using two shots with similar graphics to transition between scenes. This match cut involves an actual match and a thematic match. Here, the heat of the fire is linked to the heat of the desert. This famous match cut is symbolic. A proto-human weapon is matched with a nuclear satellite. Millennia of military history summarized in a single cut. Sometimes a connection can be made by showing two shots in the same frame, as in the case of the split screen, where two or more shots are spliced into the same frame, showing simultaneous action. Or they can be merged, such as in the overlay, where part of one shot is placed over another shot, compositing the two. This man is thinking back to his time at war. Slow dissolves into helicopters, visually matched with the fan in his hotel room. Trauma expressed through dissolves and overlays. But the oldest, most paradoxically simple and complex editing technique is the montage, from a French term meaning assembly or setup. A montage is a quick series of shots linked together through a theme or through time, separate shots cut together to create a third meaning. It has plenty of uses in mainstream and experimental cinema. This is a famous mainstream example. A long period of intense preparation is quickly summarized through shots of this man's exercises. It can also show ritual, like this self-destructive man's morning routine.
It's showtime, folks.
Or suggest an act without ever showing the act itself. Note that we never see the knife actually stab this woman. It's a stylized expression of reality. But montage can also show unreality, symbolism, expressionism, and dreams. And it can show someone's political views. This communist film uses montage to humiliate a politician, showing his shiny boots, then his stately posture, then a mechanical peacock. But just as there are 1,000 ways of saying anything, there are 1,000 ways of staging a scene. These are all ways that a story is told, and the way that they're told is as important as the stories themselves. Now, this glossary isn't comprehensive or even entirely precise, and it certainly can't walk you through every scene to show you how it works, but hopefully it's giving you the right words to describe what's going on in a moving image. It's all just in knowing what to look for. Happy moviegoing, and thanks for watching.